Geocachomaniacs.
Geo Gearheads.
Welcome back to the Geo Gearheads episode 493. I'm Daryl W4, back as usual with Chris in the Northwest.
Hey, Daryl, it's so good to be here. I love getting together every Thursday night with you, chatting about geocaching and geolocation games.
Or whatever other rat holes we tend to get into.
Well, we start off with those, and then we tend to go downhill rather quickly.
Well, and today we've got an interesting rat hole to get down because we've been talking on and off a little bit here and there. Electric vehicle caching. Mm-hmm. And of course, you know, we've got a bunch of the little tiny electric vehicles, but we kicked this off as a major topic because of some interesting news coming out of the auto companies over the last few years. And we thought immediately of one guy. One person.
Elon Musk.
No, because he doesn't go caching.
Oh.
But next to Elon Musk, there's only one other person we know who is really the electric vehicle cacher, and that's RetiredGuy.
And he looks like Elon Musk.
Hello, Chris. Hello, Daryl.
How are you doing?
Very good.
And welcome back.
To have you back.
But yeah, you are a big electric car guy. So we figured we'd pick your brain. And as we have some of the automakers, well, all of the automakers dropping gasoline-powered cars in the not-so-distant future, this is something we're all going to have to deal with at some point.
I hope it's more than just deal with. I think it's an exciting new future.
Yes, and you know, there's more than just range anxiety that people are nervous about with this stuff. And like for myself, I don't have a condo that allows us to do anything like a car charger. So going electric scares me quite a bit. Mm-hmm. So you're going to help me with that today. But for some background, I went and hit Car and Driver. They have a timeline of what a lot of the auto companies have done and are announced, and basically by 2025 we're going to be hitting a turning point with electric cars. In 2030 the UK is going to put a ban on the sale of all diesel and gas powered cars, and then in 2040 GM actually expects to be able to have its entire operation carbon neutral, and by 2050
not just the cars, but the entire operation building.
Correct. And then in 2050, Mazda, Mitsubishi, and Nissan plan to do the same thing. So this is a big thing.
That surprises me that GM is ahead of the Japanese companies.
It does to some extent, but not all that much, to be honest. They've been a lot more forward-thinking since the bailout.
Mm-hmm. Here in Washington State, the governor said that in 2030, he wants all new cars to be electric, no more gas.
Well, and I think it might be about the same for California. I know California has made grumblings, but I don't think they've actually passed the legislation yet. So yeah, it's going to be very, very short order when it's going to be tough to buy a gasoline-powered car. Mm-hmm. Now, originally it was looking like it's going to be plug-in hybrids so that you could still use gasoline, but more and more it's looking like we're going to go full electrics. And
there are I can remember in my lifetime when you used to get leaded gas, right? You needed leaded or unleaded.
Right.
And then there came a point where I have a brother-in-law who's into old cars and restoring, where there was only one gas station in town that had leaded gas. And when that left, he had to go buy lead additives for his older cars in order to run smooth. So, you know, you look at this change and you think that's not, you know, I thought, no, that's impossible. We'll always have gas cars in America, but maybe we won't.
No, I don't think we will. And the change is happening quicker than a lot of us had expected. It's going to happen a lot sooner than we're going to get our autonomous cars, which for a long time I was thinking we might see that sooner.
Mm-hmm. You know, some of the I don't want to call it auto drive, but the driver assist functions are really good. But they're not quite there yet, are they?
No. Well, and GSM in the chat brings up a good point. His question is where will all the electricity come from when we have the brownouts and rolling blackouts? He's not trying to be argumentative, just curious. And this is part of the problem of all the car companies going to all electric, because the grid
able to handle that extra load. I mean, if you remove one fuel source, you replace it with another. It's not that fuel source is gone and will never return. No, that vacuum is filled by another source of power.
And from everything I've been hearing, it's more the grid that is the problem than the actual generation. We're creating the power. We're not able to get it to the endpoints effectively enough. Now, in some places, we are having problems where there's not enough power generation.
Again, Washington State is generating powerhouse because of all the hydroelectric up here.
Sure. And hydroelectric, of course, is a big favorite. We're adding a lot of the wind farms. We're adding more solar farms as well. And these things are actually, the solar and the wind farms actually take less time to bring online than a more traditional power plant.
Right, but they produce less power overall.
Sure. But you can have more distribution. You can put a few cells here and there. One of the interesting things that our local power company has been doing are these little solar farms in like the islands of the clover leaves. So you have this space that's otherwise wasted, and they're dropping some solar cells in there and creating some power. So that's kind of cool.
I really like what they're doing in California over some of the parking lots, the car parks, putting solar up there. Not only does it shade your vehicle, right, thus lowering emissions to get the air, you got to go start the car, let it run a while, get the air conditioner running, but they're generating power at the same time.
Absolutely. So that's where we're coming from tonight's show is, this is coming, and we wanted to get a feel for what it's going to be like doing electric caching, and more than just a scooter, which I understand, Doug, you've done some of the scooter caching as well.
Well, you sent out the topic as being electric vehicle caching, and I started thinking, what electric vehicles have I cached on? So yes, my very first electric vehicle caching experience was on a Segway in Budapest. I tried actually getting to the cache from the Segway. It was up in a tree, and I couldn't quite reach and felt I was going to fall off anyway. But this is my very first electric vehicle caching experience, where there were 10 of us, and we were on Segways going through Budapest. But then we moved on. We tried some electric scooters. I think it was in Portland or San Diego. I forgot where we were first renting these, and did some caching on those. Here's my wife trying out a electric razor. I think this was in San Diego. And I'm also a big believer in some of the e-bikes. I do a lot of caching on bicycle right now. And as I get older, I will probably switch over to an e-bike. I'm an investor in an e-bike company called Superstrata, which is 3D printing the carbon graphite frame of the bikes, and able to make a very, very lightweight, very strong, inexpensive, within reason, bikes compared to other carbon graphite bikes. They're still expensive bikes, but
carbon fiber is never cheap.
No, but it's getting better as you can 3D print it. So that's a fun new technology. They're just starting to ship their first bikes. So
that's awesome. I've heard of them. I've never actually seen any of them, of course. But the electric bikes, those just seem amazing to me for caching. Because if you're going out on like a caching power trail, you have the one way where it's hop off the bike, get the cache, hop off the bike, get the cache, and then you have to come back.
Mhm.
And especially if you don't plan that as well, and you're coming uphill on that back, you're going to want a little bit of assistance for sure.
It was so easy getting there, but why is it so hard to get back?
Well, and half the time you don't even know which way the hill goes.
As you probably knew, I moved back to Boston about a year ago and set up a plan where I was just going to start clearing out my area on my bike of caches. And it started off quite easy because the closest cache was a 1/10 of a mile down the road. I could walk it, whatever. As I've cleared out further and further, the bike rides are longer and longer. And so maybe I will switch to an e-bike at some point so I can get to the more distant caches.
Hey, it makes sense. But I do love the scooters too, because especially for that kind of caching, you don't have to worry about, standing up the bike so much. Scooters are a lot easier to deal with the quick on-offs. And, especially as you start getting tired, you don't have to worry about accidentally tripping over the down tube.
Yeah. But enough about these little toys. Onto electric vehicles, what you meant, cars.
Yes, which are the bigger, more fun, more frequently used toys.
So let me start off before I go anywhere and give a little bit of disclaimer. My talk will be primarily heavily biased. I'm a heavy consumer of Tesla products. I've been a Tesla shareholder for many, many years. If you're not familiar with the stock, it has been one to own. It's up 1,500% in the last 5 years, and much, much more if you're in it very early on. It has surpassed all the other car makers combined in terms of market value. And it was primarily that Elon Musk at the very early stage said he's going all out and doing this, while all the other companies sat around and thought about doing it, projecting they'll eventually get there. And I think he started a lot of it without complete answers, but just say, we're going to have to be there eventually. It's going to happen by, and then he started putting years in, whether it happens by that year or 5 years after or 5 years before, no one really knows, but the trend is there and moving very, very quickly now. And he has gotten huge amounts of experience and has been very impressive in getting a car company from the ground up in a very short period of time, and is now the major force in where we're headed in electric vehicles.
You put that really well. You're right. He is the driving factor, and pardon the pun, I didn't even realize I made it, in electric car technology. He really is. I mean, all the other car companies are struggling to keep up to the place that he started. And when was the last time a new car company started and continued on? That just doesn't happen.
Well, we've had at least 3 electric car companies fail so far this year. So it's not an easy thing to do.
Exactly.
So a little bit more on my background. I was a mechanical engineer at MIT, so I've always been fascinated by cars and a lot of the parts inside. I remember one of my very early lectures being told by a professor, the goal of mechanical engineering is to teach you to have as few mechanical parts in something that you possibly can, because they break, they're expensive, you don't want mechanical parts. And you look at an electric car, and it is amazing how few parts there are. When you look at the chassis, you've got this big battery pack with 4 wheels and 1, 2, or 3 motors strapped onto it, and then you kind of put a passenger seat on top of it. It's that simple. Later, I know Daryl wanted to ask about maintenance. Maintenance to me is putting more windshield wiper fluid in and changing windshield wipers, and occasionally having to replace the tires. There's not much on it. You can't change your oil. There's no antifreeze. There's not much of anything. And even the brakes are likely to last the life of the car because it slows down through regeneration. So it's fascinating as you get things simpler where they may go. And I think that's a good bit of the reason why we are jumping almost straight from internal combustion engines to electric cars and somewhat skipping over the hybrids. They were part of the market. They were a good bridge, but I think it's going to move quickly away from the hybrids and all the way to the electrics over the next 5 years or so.
Yeah, the problem with the hybrid is that you have all of the disadvantages of both, but you don't have the advantages of either.
Correct.
So it's that stopgap that does make sense, especially if you're charge challenged, because you can stop and quickly top up. But otherwise, yeah, I'd rather have a plug-in than a plug-in.
The hybrids were very, very good, particularly on the range anxiety issue, as the battery packs were not very big and there was not many options of how to charge while you're on the road. And it's gotten a lot better, and 5 years from now, it'll be significantly better than that. So it will keep changing.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is one of those developing stories. And as it does, it's going to get better and cheaper to own full electric. That's why I like the plug-ins, because at least those will give you most of the advantages of the electric.
So the other early tie-in that I had was my oldest son went to work at Tesla on the original Roadster and the Model S back in 2010, back before when he would tell people he worked for Tesla, they'd all scratch their head and say, what do they do? And when they were told it's electric car company, he kind of assumed it was a toy. They were starting to produce cars, but no one had heard of them. And now looking back, saying, well, that was an exciting time to be part of that. He moved on pretty quickly, but he was there for a year and got to experience work on both the original Roadster and then the Model S.
Wow.
Quick note from GSM Times 2, the first oil well was drilled August 27th of 1859, only 162 years ago. How long would it be till we run out of oil if we were to continue to consume oil as we do today?
Does he know the answer?
He hasn't shared it yet, but I think the numbers are actually pretty bad. And it depends, too, on whether you factor in easily accessible oil or all oil.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and what oil does to the ecology of the world.
Yeah.
Once you pump it out of the ground, it's still around and doing things. It doesn't burn cleanly. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So I had, ever since my son had worked at Tesla, I was always had an interest in it, but kind of did not want a sedan, which was really their first mainstream car, the Model S, though it's quite a large sedan, a lot of capacity and whatever. But I remember when they first announced that they were going to be creating an SUV, and it was nicknamed, and eventually just the name stuck, the Model X. And within 5 minutes of that announcement, I had deposited on it and had one of the very first Model X's to come off the production line. And it was where Tesla was playing around with a lot of fun features. This had the gull wing type doors on it, on the back. They had all kinds of fun features. This car was a true SUV. I could take it out mudding and whatever. People cringed when I did that. It was probably one of the more expensive mudder cars going out. I cashed heavily in it. It had adjustable suspensions, and I just make it past tense because I don't own it anymore. But you could raise up the suspension high if you're in a caching area off-road. In fact, it was geofenced such that it would remember where you raise the suspension. So when you come back to that area, it would raise it back again based on its GPS, which I thought was quite clever. And it was a very, very cool car. It was very heavy, but still could do 0 to 60 in 3 seconds. which put it faster than just about any Ferrari or anything else out there. One of the fastest cars in the world, and an SUV.
That's
After
amazing.
that, my wife got relatively jealous, and we got her one of the very first Model 3s to come out, Tesla's smaller sedan. We very much enjoyed that car. We found that when we were just going around town or whatever, it was our utility car, used it a lot. And then Tesla announced that they were coming out with kind of a crossover version of this, the Model Y, which was a Model 3 now with a hatchback, and they called a crossover category. This was our Model Y out of the Bonneville Salt Flats on our way to California. I'll talk about the trip a little bit later. But amazing car in terms of storage capacity inside, great range, and I think the kind of Tesla's main car for the future of being a nice utility car. And this is kind of my favorite for caching. We have put, since picking up this one in September, we have 14,000 miles on it.
Wow.
So we've put a good bit of work on it. And then I also have a Model Y Performance, which is a good bit faster than the Y you just looked at. It has a very tight suspension, is not great for going through the potholes of Boston or out caching. But if you have a nice smooth road, it's great.
Now, does the Model Y come close to the Model X's cargo capacity?
It's almost as much in cubic feet, but from a practical point of view, I think it's better because it's designed where the seats fold down better and whatever. So I've enjoyed the Y. It fits our double mattress in the back for driving cross country and everything, which the X could not do. I also, when we moved to Boston, have a tandem garage, which means you park one car behind the other, and the X and a Y would not fit. It's a very small garage. So two Ys would fit, or a Y and a 3. So that's the reason I got rid of the X. It wouldn't fit in a garage. And then I have two really fun ones on order. And at Tesla, all it means is that you put down a deposit and you later decide if you're going to take it. But when they first announced them, I put down deposits on them. The first is a Model S Plaid, and I've actually ordered a Plaid Plus, and Elon just tweeted that he may have canceled it or it has been canceled. So I have to find out what's going on with that. The Plus had a 600-mile range on the battery pack, and so I might end up having my order downgraded to just the Model S Plaid, which you're seeing here. They just started shipping them. About 400 miles of range, 0 to 60 in less than 2 seconds, and 1,000 horsepower in the Plaid version. So this is kind of where Tesla's going in terms of all their vehicles, of being able to get that 400-mile range eventually. If they want to put in a third motor, they can get 1,000 horsepowers out of it. It's quite fascinating what they can do with it. And I think this will be typical of where each of them will head. I expect a Y will be at 400-mile range, maybe not 0 to 60 in 2 seconds, but maybe 2.5.
So I can see if you get that Plaid, you're going back out to the Bonneville Salt Flats and seeing if it can really do its 200 miles an hour.
Oh, I think I might, because doing it on Pennsylvania Turnpike or places like that could end up pretty big tickets.
Yeah.
And then even faster than that is the new Roadster, I put an order in on this 3 years ago. It's been targeted for 2019, 2020, 2021. They're saying 2022 now, though some people are saying it might be 2023. This has a 620-mile range on it, top speed of 250 if you actually get a particular tire package, everything on it, and a 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. I don't know whether this will be a very practical car, particularly not for geocaching, but we will see.
Wow. Uh-oh.
Oh, we seem to have lost Doug temporarily.
Maybe he has to go recharge.
Yeah.
I heard a thump right before that, so he may have bumped something.
Yeah, I'm sure he did. And he's not in his normal workspace. He's off in the woods somewhere.
That's right.
But this is one of Bryling's concerns. His says his type of geocaching is go for a long drive from home, turn off on a forest service road, cache until it's time to camp, and find a campsite. Nowhere to charge the car at night.
Right. So,
and it wouldn't stop long enough during the day to charge.
There you go. I was thinking, well, what about a solar panel? But if you're driving until it gets dark and then pulling off and finding a place to camp, yeah, that's going to be tough. I asked Retired Guy, before the show, so you're doing long trips in that, how are you keeping the battery charged? And I don't want to steal his thunder because we don't know if he's going to come back. But he said he would often go and spend the night at campsites and just plug in. So.
Yeah, no, that's not your like rustic campsite. This is a campsite that has, the power.
Right. So, an RV type campsite or one with services, however you want to look at that.
Yeah, well, I'm sure that a lot of the campsites will have the power, so you can plug in and run lamps and that kind of stuff.
Their phones.
Yeah, and at this point, everyone's got the phones, so a lot of them are doing the power for that kind of stuff, and that will charge most of the electric cars, just not quickly.
Not quickly, right. So you can get a regular 110 cord, plug that in, and it will charge your car. Not in 30 minutes, but it should charge it overnight just fine.
Yeah, and of course it does depend on the type of car and all of that other normal stuff. Your mileage may vary.
Mm-hmm. GSM times 2 wants to know, do you see Tesla entering NASCAR, Indy, or Grand Prix racing? I'm gonna go with no, just simply because that's comparing apples to oranges.
It would have to be like Formula E, I think.
Oh, there you go.
But what is more interesting is some of the rally races are actually going electric. And that makes a lot more sense.
Mm-hmm.
Electric for that kind of stuff.
What Roger says. Tesla may not, but other companies are working on electric race cars and rally cars.
Right. And the big news up here recently has been that Ford F-150 electric.
Mm-hmm.
That is such an awesome concept, because now you're putting all of that torque in where people really need it. Mm-hmm. They have a version for contractors that's only about 150-mile range.
Right.
Most contractors don't do that in a day.
Right.
So this truck is their day work truck.
Right. They're going to drive out to a work site. There's electricity at the work site, right? They've got to be able to use tools. So it's already there. They can plug in their tools. They can plug in their truck and off they go. Well, or they stay.
Yeah. Well, and you can get longer ranges and stuff with those as well. But it has the AC as well. So they can plug in some of those tools that they'd have to bring a generator before.
Right. So if let's say you're framing a house and there's no electricity there yet, right? It's not worked in. So they can run off of they can produce AC off of their truck.
Yeah, so it's a great way to go. And this is one of the things that one of the guys I know who is a cacher, but I don't think is in my area anymore, worked for BAE, working on the new human transport vehicle or whatever they're calling it, the replacement essentially for the Hummer.
Hmm.
And the concept that they were working on was essentially you have a platform with a generator and a motor. You could actually take the generator out. You could put all batteries in. It was supposed to be modular. So that you could have like bigger battery packs or just a generator or so that they could do whatever they wanted. And one of their big claims when they were pitching it was, hey, you don't have to have a generator. You drive out there, you have your generator on the truck.
Right.
If you don't need the generator, it runs silent. So yeah, electric has a lot of advantages all the way around. But Doug has made it back. So why don't we actually kick off the range anxiety question? Because we were talking in your absence about bridling and having problems with an inability to charge in the middle of the forest at night.
Sure. So when I first got a Tesla, it was the Model X. I had 220 miles of range, rated range. And the faster you went, the worse your range was. Surprisingly, if you were in stop and go traffic, going very slowly, whatever, your range is actually very good. The opposite of what you would normally think. But because you're regenerating the power when you brake, it doesn't mind stop and go. What an electric car really hates is air resistance. And if you go through the physics, basically the drag on a car is the square of the speed. And so the faster you go, the worse efficiency you have. And so 90 miles an hour is much worse than 80, which is much worse than 70. And so highway speeds are not that good. So the very early Model X I had at 220 was creating, I wouldn't call it in my mind range anxiety, because I viewed it as a fun game, making sure I didn't run out and whatever. I did run out an internal combustion engine car 7 times. I always kind of liked seeing how far you could get. So I didn't mind it starting off, but people kept on saying, should I get an electric car? And I go, not yet. 220 miles is kind of tough without many superchargers around, without ways to charge it. And yes, I had a different form of range anxiety. It was part of a game to me, but it was there. I had to think about it. And that is quite a problem. That is now moved in my mind to being much, much smaller. It is still there. But as the range on most of the Teslas, or the cars I've been driving, gets up in the 300-mile range, it is now starting not to matter much. I plug in my driveway or in my garage, and when I take out my car, if I decide to charge it fully up that night, I've got 300 miles of range, and that is generally fine. Not quite enough. Every now and then I look and go, yeah, I wish I had a little bit more. And so I'm kind of intrigued on how much it will be before I feel totally comfortable. And some of the bizarre geocaching trips will very much tell me whether I will be comfortable on different ranges as time goes on. But as some of these cars are going up to 400, I think it will get rid of just about all the anxiety that I might have. And as superchargers are much more prevalent and much faster. So just going over the basics, as I said, the range of electric vehicles right now is anywhere from roughly 200, though there are some below 200, which are viewed as commuter cars. They're great plugging in, going to work, coming home. But if you suddenly took it a cross-country trip, it would be miserable. but the range is going to be between 200 and 400. And I view those as quite a wide range. When I was down in the low 200s, it was starting to get disruptive in making a long trip. You were stopping less than every 3 hours, and I did not even have to go to the bathroom yet or get another cup of coffee. So it was a little bit quick. But to understand it, you start off usually overnight charging. So you start off any trip with a full charge, and then you have to stop at a supercharger. The Tesla's network of superchargers, they have 25,000 throughout the world now. And if you're not going off to find a remote cache or whatever, they're all over. And let me put an asterisk on that right now, because for caching, they're not necessarily all over, because we go to very, very weird places. And there might not be a supercharger near that. But when you do get to a supercharger, they charge right now on most of the superchargers at 500 miles per hour. So if you're thinking about it, you've just depleted 250 miles on your car, it will recharge it in roughly half an hour. The next generation superchargers, which have been rolling out, I've gone to some of them, will charge at 1,000 miles per hour. And that is starting to get to be the amount of time it takes to run into McDonald's, grab some food, go to the bathroom, stretch your legs a little bit, and feel like similar to filling up at a gas station, because you can now really fill up in 15 or 20 minutes then. It's not that disruptive. But there's still the question about how many superchargers are there, and are you going places where there are no superchargers? So to kind of talk about it, let me kind of go through the road trip I did back in November. We had a new grandson born in California, and without being able to fly, my wife and I said, well, let's hop in her Tesla Y. We put a mattress down in the back because we were going to spend many nights at campsites. And we drove 8,353 miles on this road trip. We happened to stop. We took the northern route so I could get the oldest geocache in Wisconsin, Iowa, South Dakota, Wyoming, and pick up a year 2000 cache in northern or northeastern California called Vitruvius. That trip was very, very easy on a supercharger basis. We were mainly on Route 90 or Interstate 90. I also did the Interstate 90 challenge because we're on it. And the only issue I end up having was the cache in Northern California, or Northeastern California, GC11E, because there was no supercharger next to it or anywhere nearby. So as I was plotting out the route, I had to look for a hotel that had supercharging. And there was one 10 miles away, and that worked out. I did not get a choice of different hotels. There's not many towns up in that area. People know it well. So I stayed at the one hotel that had the supercharger, charged up that night, and went and got the cache the next morning, and then on to San Jose. So a good trip. The way back, we did not have any issue with the superchargers. I did some calculations. If anybody wants to get really nerdy about it, we used up almost 2,600 kilowatt hours of electricity, including the heating of our car overnight. And my cost per mile probably averaged about 4 cents. We had some 0 cents at the hotels and campsites we stayed at. And of course, in my initial garage and my son's garage, it was roughly 4 cents. Sorry, that 0 cents at the campsites and the hotels, because I did not have to pay for my electricity. About 4 cents a mile, as I calculated it, at my house and at my son's house. because we had to pay the 11 or 12 cents per kilowatt hour. And then at superchargers, it's marked up some, so maybe 7 cents a mile. But we probably averaged somewhere around 4 or 5 cents per mile going to California and back. So quite a good savings there.
That's amazing. So you cleared up a question I was going to ask. Weren't superchargers at one time free for Tesla owners?
Yes and no. They were built into the price of the car.
Okay.
So my Model X came with lifetime supercharging, and I guess they benefited from the fact that the lifetime of that car for me was only 42,000 miles. If I drove it 200,000, I would have had free supercharging. But they've gone away from that now, and all new cars that are purchased have to pay for their supercharging, and it can be anywhere from 17 to maybe 22, 23 cents per kilowatt hour.
So for the uninitiated, those without electric cars, what does a typical charge up cost?
$10 to $12.
Okay. We have a question from GSM times 2. Do Tesla superchargers work on other electric cars?
They do not. And this has been a question that's been asked by a lot of consumers of will there end up being 3, 4, 5 different networks out there? There's kind of 2 networks. One is Tesla, because they jumped in first and said, in order for us to sell electric cars, we need superchargers because people need to do long trips on the highway. And so they put out their own network. No other car company has put out their own network, though they have supported networks of other charge stations going out there. VW has been a very heavy supporter of one, but they're all looking at using that network. Elon Musk has said on numerous occasions that he would consider making his network available to other cars at some point. And I don't know how serious that is, what conditions that would be or whatever. But right now you pretty much have 2 types of charging. You have the Teslas and the non-Teslas. And I don't know exactly what the long-term future would be. If you just trying to do a crystal ball and look 10, 20 years into the future, it would seem silly having 2 types of gasoline out there. It would probably feel silly saying, okay, so you're going to stop at this place and it only has Tesla power. So my guess is that eventually we'll be plugging into things, and that won't be a major advantage to Tesla anymore. It will just become standard that you can plug in almost anywhere you need to and supercharge.
Right.
But there will be different standards that we'll have to figure out along the way. Teslas run off of 400 volts. Some are now going to run at 800 volts, and you can charge an 800 volt one quicker. So that may become a different standard, or maybe just have a switchable charger that can do both. So,
right.
A whole bunch of just different thoughts on where that heads. But right now, if you were to get an electric car, you have to, kind of look and say, what is the map like? Try mapping out what it would be like to go cross country. It is no longer difficult to do that in a Tesla. I haven't tried it. My brother just got an Audi e-tron. He has it left Kentucky in it, so I don't know how easy it would be or not. I've driven it, a really nice car, but I don't know how he goes about charging it as he drives cross country, which he has yet to do.
Right. I mean, that would be what you're describing makes perfect sense now, but it would be silly to say, oh, I drive a Ford, I have to go to the Ford gas station. Or, oh, you have a GMC car, you have to go to the GMC station.
Correct.
Right. And that just, you're like, no, nobody does that. But that's because, the gas is universal at this point, and I think electricity will get there.
Yep. So anyway, just a little bit about the car, the Model Y driving to California. Its entire back folds down, and you can sleep 2 people under 6 foot comfortably. This is the back. We had a double mattress in it. And if you look all the way through, you can see a little bit glowing area on the dashboard of the car. That is fireplace mode, which allows you to keep the car at a precise temperature overnight. While it's in fireplace mode, you can have it put a fireplace on it so you feel romantic with your wife and whatever. And it even has crackling sounds coming over the speakers. If you'd like, you can also turn that off so you can sleep. But so we had fireplace mode on. It probably cost us about 10% of a battery overnight on the chilly nights, but was very comfortable. We held it at 72 degrees and very much enjoyed it. And it also has a dog mode, which I do have 2 Geo pups. They don't get to go cache with me as much as they used to because one goes one way, one goes the other way, and that's how I know the cache is straight ahead. But when they do, and I decide to leave them in the car, it puts a big message up on the screen saying dog mode. My owner is away, but the temperature is held at 70 degrees or whatever you set it to. Do not panic. And then it holds the temperature there such that the dogs stay perfectly fine, and puts a message up so no stranger comes by and breaks your window to rescue the dogs. So kind of another cool feature to have on a car, particularly if you travel your dogs a lot, which we do.
Mm-hmm. My son says that's the reason we have to get a Tesla right there is dog mode. I'm like, that is really cool. Well,
yep.
Especially for the dog.
Especially. And so we drove out, taking about a week to get out to California. A week back, we stayed at RV parks, cooked over a campfire. Though we were not totally roughing it. We had some good Wagyu steaks thrown onto the fire. And we stayed at RV parks often because I can plug into their 30 amp RV power and charge up my car, so it's all charged the next morning, ready to go.
And you were sleeping in the car as well, right?
Yes.
So you had campfire mode going, so using some power while you were recharging, and you still had a full battery in the morning.
Correct. So it would use some power, but would gain plenty such that it would be fully charged by morning. So that situation worked quite well. So what a typical day for us was that we would usually start off fully charged, either because we're at an RV camp and plugged in there, or we were at a hotel where we chose a few hotels that had destination chargers at them, which many now do. I at some point would have to choose a one hotel over another, but there was plenty of them where I would choose one, plug in at night, and the next morning I'm fully charged. So we'd start off our day, drive 250 miles, stop for 30 minutes, drive another 250, stop for 30 minutes, and drive another 250. And so with 2 stops, get in about 700, 800 miles in the day, unless we got diverted doing a few geocaches that were long hikes or whatever, and then our days were a few less miles. But all worked out very, very well now. And I do remember back 6-7 years ago, where a friend first drove Boston to Denver, and he had it as quite a challenge in a Tesla. It's changed now. There are plenty of the superchargers along the way, and destination chargers at many of the hotels and whatever, to just top yourself back off.
All right. Well, we are running a little bit long, but I want to touch on at least one more thing that we haven't talked about, which is power trails.
Okay. So I haven't tried this. I have not taken my Tesla out for a true power trail. I've done heavy days of caching in it. But when you pose this issue to me, I gave it a little bit of thought. And let me just tell you what I think might work, or what would happen and what will not happen. And then at some point I may get an opportunity to try it. Unfortunately, my car's in Boston, and most of the power trails are not in the Northeast. So I don't have a great opportunity to be trying them. And I'm not ready to drive all the way back to Nevada or California to do power trail, because my wife will probably be with me and not really want to go power trailing. But in any case, a couple things you could look at. We joked last time we did a power trail, or the time before that we did ET Highway, and we were really seriously trying to figure out how fast you can go from 0 to whatever back down to 0 again to get between the caches. And so my first kind of joking look at this is, if you can accelerate with acceleration of 0 to 60 in 2 or 3 seconds, you obviously can get that 1/10 of a mile or 528 feet much, much faster, and it would knock some time off. I don't know exactly how much. You'd be throwing rock and dust and whatever all over the places you did it. And so I'm not sure it would make a huge difference to your speed, but it could if your 0 to 60 is 2 or 3 seconds versus 10 seconds, which means your 0 to 30 or whatever your calculated top speed would be is significantly faster than a gas-powered car. The efficiency, I decided to try doing a rough calculation on this. If you are really doing a true power trail with a 528-foot spacing, the electric vehicle's efficiency is going to be quite good. As I said before, if you are slowing down, almost all you're slowing down is regenerating power back into the battery, similar to what a hybrid does. And so it generally is going to be, in stop and go traffic, 80 or 90% efficient. I'm guessing that if it was doing a power trail where you're going 0 to 30 to 0, it's probably going to be 70% efficient, 80% efficient, somewhere in there. And so a real rough calculation is you could do 2,000 caches on a single charge, working those numbers. Now, obviously, you have to get from your hotel to the start of it and back again, and that tends to be a long distance. So that creates a problem. And so I'm not sure it works all that well if you start off having to drive 50, 60, 70 miles, and then you're going to have to drive 50, 60, 70 miles after you're done, because you can't carry a spare tank of gas with you or spare fuel with you the way we did when we did the ET Highway. We had water and we had gas in the back, and we needed it on one of our legs, if I remember.
Just sometimes too in the chat said that when he did the ET Highway as fast as possible, they had to stop every hour to cool the brakes. The next time they did it, they slowed down and the brakes did not overheat.
When we did it, we did not have trouble with the brakes, but fascinating issue. I don't know whether we were not jamming them quite as hard, but we did get very good on guessing the timing of, if we started braking, we'd get to a complete stop right at the mark where it said 20 feet. And I can't even recall what kind of car we did the ET Highway in. It was a rental. I do remember running it through the car wash twice before we returned it, which is more than I've ever done for a rental before, but I felt a little guilty in what it looked like when we were done.
Well, and I do imagine that the electrics are, and even a hybrid, are going to be a little bit better because of the regenerative braking.
Yes.
They're not going to have the overheat issues with the brakes.
Well, that's what I don't know exactly, depending on exactly how fast you're trying to decelerate. If you're really trying to do this quickly, you're going to be using the brakes some. Almost all the time on a Tesla, you're not using the brakes. They view that the brakes will probably last the life of the car because you rarely tap on the brakes. You tap on the brake pedal and it causes the power to be regenerated back into the battery. So only in terms of panic stopping are the brakes really applied. And so it's not clear on whether the brakes would heat up much at all on the Tesla, but I'm just guessing at this point, and I probably need to try it. For comparison, we did a quick calculation, or this was based on some of our real data. We got roughly 7 miles per gallon when doing ET highway in a internal combustion engine, and maybe other people that are listening can tell us if they remember their mileage, or as one of the other cachers said, well, we don't care 70 miles per gallon. We were getting 7 miles per gallon. We were getting 70 caches per gallon. And that becomes a magical number because that says on a 20-gallon tank, you can get 1,400 caches. Once again, you have to get to the start and get back home. And that's often why you take that spare can and refill your car, which we had to do on one of the far reaches. But in any case, they seem somewhat equivalent in terms of how many they could get on a charge, particularly on a fill up, particularly because the EVs are quite good at starting and stopping. But if you had to go for a long drive to get there, that would be a problem. Another thing that because the EVs are so efficient and aerodynamic and whatever, they use their energy very well. When you turn on air conditioning, they're no more efficient than an internal combustion engine. And so AC feels like it's much more of a hit on your performance than a internal combustion engine because the regular driving of the car is so efficient. So if we're in the middle of Nevada in the desert running the AC full blast, that would probably affect our caches per mile or caches per gallon type calculations. So I don't know. ET Highway, last I looked, does not have a supercharger anywhere near it. So I'm not sure I would try ET Highway with a EV yet. But maybe when you have 400 miles of range, or maybe there'll be a supercharger closer by in a few years. So definitely a possibility.
And the aliens and the UFOs won't come by and just charge your car for you?
They did not, while I was there, even charge my phone or anything.
Oh, bummer. Okay. Well,
yeah, but I had a tinfoil hat on, so I was trying to prevent them.
Oh, they probably use a totally different technology than electricity, silly electricity.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And I know we have a lot more that we should cover, but we are at roughly our time limit, so we're going to wrap it up. But real quick, I know that you had some great cache series. Did you want to do a plug for those, perhaps?
I have 4 different series, one of which is slowly coming down because it's in Florida and I'm not able to maintain that. But the 3 that I have that I'm actively maintaining, plus one lab cache series, are the following. First, the Retired Monkey Challenge Trail down in Florida. It has about 150 challenge caches as part of it. And we run a leaderboard keeping track of who has completed the most of the challenge caches. It's actually 160 something now. And we get a lot of fun challenges, some of which were fathered in before the original moratorium on challenge caches. So there's some old style challenge caches and some modern ones. But that you can find retiredmonkey.com and read all about it and see the leaderboard, see all the different challenges. Second one is in the city of Boston area. I have a video game series. I had one down in Florida. I'm slowly dismantling that, but have it based on classic video games around the Boston area. A third one, which is a tribute to the famous chefs of Boston, and those are scattered throughout the Boston area. Both of these have leaderboards. The video game one is particularly themed to the individual video games, both in often puzzles and the actual cache container. And then the fourth one, which a group of us put together, is a 45-stop lab cache along the Boston Freedom Trail, where you hike the Freedom Trail, you get 45 lab caches, and then a final bonus cache, which you get a Freedom Trail path tag when you finish the bonus cache. So those are what I've been up to on different series of caches. They're all linked at RetiredGuy.com if you want to see them.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I definitely, I like visiting Boston anyway. Haven't done it in years. So now I have yet another excuse to waste even more time in Boston.
There you go.
Thank you again. And next week, we're going to be talking about a bunch of random topics again as we have our randomized CX. I'm not sure how to do that. I mean, I could call it customer experience, but
Kicks.
Oh, yeah, but there's no I this time.
Oh.
The week after that, though, we have Team AJK joining us once again to talk about puzzle caches, back by popular demand.
Oh, she's great. Hey, until then, I know you can't wait, but check the Cacheamaniacs website at cacheamaniacs.com for more on the Geo Gearheads, including show notes for this and all of our episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, so leave us feedback by emailing geogearheads@cacheamaniacs.com or through the many channels of social media. Your support helps keep the Cacheamaniac shows coming. Please consider becoming a patron through the link on our website to support the Cacheamaniac shows. Geo Gearheads is produced by Chris Umfenauer and Daryl Wattenberg. The show is copyright 2021 by Daryl Wattenberg. All rights reserved.
Cash with the Cacheamaniacs.